We'll go ahead and call the work session for Monday, September 17th to order. First is the introduction of new firefighters. Chief Hansen.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, stand up. There you go. I'm happy to introduce 4 of our 6 new firefighters. 2 of them couldn't make it tonight. But we have Bryant Schlachter, Adam, help me out, Genther, I can never get your name right, Jacob Wesley, and Casey Hoyam. So they are all brand new, started a week ago last Thursday. So we just wanted to bring them before you and you can look at them. Hopefully just like this and not on a fire truck in your neighborhood. Yeah. And a good thing anyhow. Right. So.
Well, congratulations. We're glad you're on board. You've got an exciting opportunity in front of you. And as probably Chief Hansen has told you already, I've had a successful career of over 40 years in the fire service. And so you can make it a lifelong career. So congratulations. Welcome aboard, Council.
Thank you for volunteering and being a part of the fire department. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right.
Now you can sit through the rest of our meeting, or if Chief Hansen has excused you, you can be excused as well, but you certainly could stay for the entertainment.
What do you say?
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Willmar New Lions water fountain donation. Mr. Christensen.
We have the whole report up here, or the whole agenda up here? We don't?
You'd have to ask Judy that, I don't know.
Mayor, members of council, I'm going to wing it just a little bit here. In front of you tonight is a discussion. The Willmar New Lions has, as we mentioned last time, has donated, we changed it to donating cash instead of donating the device so that we can, so the city will pay for the fountain. It's in the shape of a lion's head. I think there's a member here tonight that can talk about it. So if you have specific questions about the device, the city of Willmar Public Works Department has suggested at this point Rice Park, and I don't know if the Lions have accepted that necessarily or not, but I would invite her up and to discuss it.
Pam?
Hi. So the Noon Lions did talk about the parks that might be a possible option. And do you have a picture of the lion's head? Yes. So it's quite animated. And so we did think that the Rice Park was a good fit for the animated fountain.
Excellent. So they're requesting us to approve the location of Rice Park. And council have any questions? Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's fantastic. Thank you so much for the generosity. I was just wondering what the value of the donation is.
I believe it was $2,000.
Thank you so very much.
Councilmember Maskey.
Also, thank you. And I think that is the absolute perfect place for it. It will complement the splash pad wonderfully. I think it'll have a lot of use, so thank you.
I also want to thank you for your donation. Now, this is 2 meetings in a row. I know that you won't be here for all 26 of our meetings, but we do appreciate the fact that you do come back and your continued investment in Willmar. So on behalf of the mayor's office, thank you to the Lions Club for the work that they're doing and the investment you're making. So you're doing great work. Thank you very much. And we will move this forward to our regular meeting. I believe that Mr. Christensen could handle it, but if you wanted to stick around for that, you could.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. I will take care of the authorizations and all of that information at the council meeting.
Thank you. Next, we have the Willmar Municipal Utilities 2019 proposed budget presentation. Mr. John Herron.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Again, as always, we appreciate the opportunity to be in front of the council here this evening and presenting our budget. We're on a little bit different time frame than the city is. We have to have our budgets finalized and completed here before October 1st, as we need to submit our budgets to MISO, which is our transmission provider, by that date. So with that, we're going to ask that it's moved forward to the council agenda for final approval by the council. With that said, I will turn it over to Denise Runge, our Director of Finance, to go over our budget as well as our capital improvement plan, and we'll field any questions after that. Thank you.
John, before you turn it over, is this something new because we went to the new organization, or is this something that's always been there?
This has been in place this will be the third year. Since we became a transmission owner 3 years ago, we have to submit it's referred to as an attachment O to MISO, which is Midwest Independent Operator System. They're the organization that manage the transmission system in the upper Midwest here.
Thank you. Go ahead with your report.
Thank you. As you'll see on the screens and in your packet, we're looking first at the operating budget. Our operating budget, we are on our revenue budgeting approximately $250,000 less than 2018, the majority of that being our estimations and our transmission revenue. Moving down to the operating expenses, our operating expenses are approximately 1.48% higher than 2018. And our overall retained earnings are about $600,000 less at $4.788 million are what we are estimating for our margins for 2019. Moving on to the next page is our statement of cash flow 5-year capital improvement plan. I'm going to skip over that for just a minute. There is some detailed breakdown of those totals between our electric and our water. The first one being for our water department. You can see we have some potential bonding in 2020. That would be for the new water treatment plant that we are looking at or we're proceeding with. And then looking at our cash flow for the next 5 years, you can see it declining once we get that water treatment plant in place. We are working on a rate study in 2019, and with that rate study, we are anticipating needing to increase the water rates to help cover those bond payments on the water treatment plant, along with the additional items that the city is looking at us taking over in the future. Moving down to the electric, again, we do have some bonding potentially in 2021. That would be covering some additional generation or new generation that we would potentially be implementing or adding to the system. Overall, our cash flow on the electric side is pretty stable, so we don't anticipate any rate increase on the electric side. However, again, with that rate study, we will be looking at possibly realigning that revenue so that it aligns correctly, especially with distributed generation, that the people are paying the correct share of that revenue to us. Are there any questions on any of the numbers that I just presented to you, or any additional questions?
Councilman Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, on the first page, general operating revenues, I see that you projected the commercial industrial to be down and the residential to be up. I would suspect personally that the commercial industrial would be higher because with what's going on an industrial park. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason it's forecasted to be less?
Yeah, those numbers are based on historical. So if our sales were historically in the last 12 months higher on the residential than the commercial, that's how it would project out looking at 2019.
So you don't consider moving forward, just historical?
We can't necessarily predict the future, so that's kind of how we look into the future to get the numbers aligned relatively close is based on historical. If we are aware of some major projects that are going to make a significant difference, we'll take those into consideration. But as far as on the revenue for 2019, I was not aware of any of those specific cases that would factor in there substantially to make a big difference between the two.
That also affects the franchise fee. And I see that's gone down for 19 from 2018.
Correct. The 3 million that we had put in there for 2018, that had not been approved yet, and the details hadn't been approved. And so we were just estimating what that was going to be. Now for 2019, everything has been approved and in place, so we can get a better handle on exactly what that number is. So that's the difference between the 3 million and the 2.6 at this point.
Just a suggestion, it might be helpful for the council members and the public if we had, instead of 18 and 19, maybe 17, 18 to 19, or 16 through 19, just to see where the trend is, where it's lying. And then miscellaneous, what's the $500,000 difference there?
The majority of that is our joining of Missouri River Energy Services. They would be providing us capacity payments on our diesel generators and our wind turbines, and I believe the power plant partially in 2019. And so there's $441,000 in that line that correlates to those capacity payments from Missouri River.
And is there an expense in that correlates with that also later on down the road under expenses?
Yeah, they would be in the operating expenses as they were in the past, as far as maintaining the wind turbines, maintaining the diesel generators, the diesel that goes into the generators, the testing of them, that kind of thing.
Okay. And under operating expenses, is that production operation dip, is that from no coal or?
From power plant expenses mainly, yes, and coal being one of the line items in there.
Okay, there's considerable drop off there of expense. So is that what we're looking at?
To clarify that a little further for Council Member Christensen, it's an excellent question because there's a large shift in numbers. But if you look at the three top lines underneath our operating expenses on the electric budget, the top two are related to our power plant. So with the winding down of the power plant, with less power coming out of the plant, our costs at the plant are considerably less. However, when you look at the next line, purchase power, next year a lot of the power that's produced at the plant is going to be picked up through purchase power sales. So that's why that number is up. So you take those three numbers together, there's a slight increase, and that has to do with our power supply contracts through WIPI and GRE.
Okay. That's all I've got presently. I just glancing over this. I did not look at it before the meeting. So.
One other follow-up question, Commissioner or Councilor Christensen, under the intergovernmental franchise, the franchise fee. Franchise fee to the city from the utility remains flat underneath our agreement between the city and the utility. On the top, it looks like there's a decline. If you look down on the bottom, the very last line before the retained earnings, under intergovernmental transfer, you'll see that's flat. And that has to do with the minimum dollar amount that the utility pays to the city until our kilowatt sales continue to increase. Willmar is very similar as all communities, all consumers of power across the nation. The sales of electricity has been flat. There's more savings going on than what there is increased sales. So Denise and I spoke about that a little bit before, or as we were working on budgets here. And we are seeing a slight increase, to answer your question with what's going on in industrial park and within the community itself. Sales are moving up slightly, but we haven't reached that threshold yet to where the franchise fee would increase in 19 to the city, but we're getting close to that point.
Is the transition to LED by homeowners and industry having a major effect also?
That's where the largest savings is coming from. A lot of our businesses are and have transitioned over to LEDs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again for a very thorough report. I was going to point that out too on the intergovernmental transfer, and that's the minimum level that will be transferred over. So, and then it goes into the equation to figure out the other numbers. Thank you very much. And we will, unless there's objection from the council, we'll move this forward because again, they have to have this approved by October 1st. Okay, we'll move it forward.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
You can stick around in the meeting, or if you want to step out for an hour and 40 minutes, you can do that too. It's up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Exactly. Next is Labor Committee report. Councilmember Meske.
I did meet with the HR director. We had a great conversation and covered several things, and as promised, we were only bringing things that would be complete, and there are 2 proposals that I think we're going to hear about tonight. The first one, the Kronos presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'll have to find the right one for you here. Here we go. Okay. So I have some more information on Kronos for you, but first I wanted to give you a little background information before I get into what Kronos can do. So currently the city uses all paper time cards. Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Is that better? Okay. Currently, the city uses all paper time cards for our timekeeping and payroll purposes, and the same thing for pay stubs. It's all on paper, pen and paper. So we're a little outdated. We're a little bit behind the times. And unfortunately, those time cards we use don't track our start and end times. They don't track our PTO accruals, and our break times. So we don't have that information on the time cards. It's just literally total hours worked for that day. So it's a lot of time and a lot of paper wasted, transferring that back and forth. Employees fill it out and sign it, get it to the manager to sign, get it to payroll to process. So it's a lot of double checking and rechecking, making sure everything is correct. And unfortunately, it does come with a lot of errors when you do timekeeping that way. So there are errors if employees don't understand our policies and procedures. They're not calculating leave time correctly or comp time correctly, or using vacation time they haven't accrued yet and trying to cash it out on a time card. It's just not being aware of what's in their bank, things like that. It all adds up with these time card errors that need to be corrected. Same thing for pay stubs. It's all literally on paper. There are no electronic versions anywhere that an employee can access. So if they've lost a time card, it is gone. They'd have to request another one from payroll if they needed to see any previous time cards that they'd lost. Same thing for any employee changes, address changes, name changes. They want to change their deductions, direct deposit account. It all has to be done on paper. And unfortunately, it's usually a couple different forms between HR and payroll and the benefit company that have to all be completed and filled out. So it's a lot of paper, a lot of time, and supplies that we're using to do this. So that's a problem that I believe they've been looking at since before I even started to fix, because it is a very outdated system. So that when I came in, I had previously had a lot of experience with Kronos. And so that was my first recommendation, because I've used it before and was very happy with it. We have looked at other companies. I've worked with Paychex and ADP and a few other companies. But that was the one that stood out the most to me, that I thought was the easiest system to use. So that's where we went first. And with that, I can jump into exactly what is Kronos. So they are a human capital management provider, because they do a lot more than just timekeeping and payroll systems. They have been around for over 40 years, headquartered out of Massachusetts. They do have over 5,000 employees worldwide and over 22,000 customers. Over 40 million people do use Kronos in one way or another every day, so they know what they're doing. They also have a very strong presence in the Minnesota public employers as well. Those are all of their clients, too, that are public employers. So everything on Kronos is electronic or cloud-based, so everything will be online, and we can get rid of all of that paper. And beyond just the timekeeping and payroll and employee self-service, they offer applicant tracking or recruiting system. They do new hire onboarding, HR features, the time reporting system, which is what we're sorely needing. Performance management can be integrated as well. They can do your payroll and tax filing, that employee self-service, and all electronic pay stubs. So really managing the entire employee life cycle is what they can offer. Currently, on the right-hand side there, you'll see we're currently using those 3 different systems to do part of what Kronos can do, but definitely not all. And those systems do not work together and communicate with each other. They're all completely separate, independent systems that we have to manually enter information into. So NeoGov is what we're currently using for applicant tracking. That T-Sheets is what we're using for some project tracking, which can be done through the time reporting system that Kronos offers. And then Conduent is more than just payroll. Conduent they use for general budgeting and ledger and other things. But I do have the cost of just payroll through Conduent is $4,600 annually. So we have that as well. And then another cost, which is very hard to quantify, is just the employee hours spent on these time cards and making sure they're correct and inputting all the data and then distributing all the pay stubs to every employee. It's very hard to quantify, but it obviously takes a lot of time, paper, supplies to do all of that. So just a very brief overview of some of the things that Kronos can do. For the applicants and new hires, we can post all of our job openings on the Kronos system one time. That will automatically post it to our website, our Facebook page, and they offer over 8,000 different job boards it can automatically post to, and I'll only have to post it once. All of the applicants can apply online. They'll just need to create a username and password similar to what they do now, upload their information and their resume. I can schedule interviews through the system, correspond with all of the applicants and or new hires through the system, and this would completely replace NeoGov. We could discontinue that in 2019. The onboarding, the really nice feature of that is all of the applicants, once they're a new hire, all of that information will be automatically input into our timekeeping and payroll. No double entry of all the information that they've already had to enter. All documents, their new hire letters, their benefit information can be available through the system. It will automatically then remove that job posting from those 8,000 job boards, so I don't have to do that as well. And then from then it tracks all of our orientation tasks. If they have to complete drug and background screenings, the safety trainings, everything they need to do to be onboarded as a new employee. And then their timekeeping system, which is our big need right now. It is a punch-in and punch-out system, but that can be done online. It can be done on a laptop or computer desktop, phone app on the phone, anything that has an internet connection. They'll be able to log in and they can punch in and punch out. So we could finally discontinue all of those paper time cards. So obviously that's going to save every employee a lot of time. Every payroll, they won't have to do that. And their managers, it's going to save a lot of time as well. So they can view all of their employees' time cards in one place on one system to approve them for payroll. It's going to reduce all those errors that I discussed a little bit before. All of our policies and rules will be automatically built into the system. So they won't be allowed to use vacation that isn't in their bank, or it will automatically calculate your comp time for you. So we know that it was actually done correctly. So all of that can be built into the system. Can track jobs and your projects. Right now we're using that T-Sheets program I mentioned before to track public works hours spent on mowing versus plowing versus tree trimming. So they can do all of that in Kronos as well. So we could discontinue T-Sheets and we could implement that department-wide if we wanted to do more project tracking in other departments as well. You can track employee trends since managers will now have access to in and out times and break times, and they can see previous time cards because right now they can't currently go back and look at last month's time card because they don't have those. So that will be helpful, and also has scheduling features. So every manager can see the paid time off requests will come through the system, and they can see who else is off that day before they approve something, and it will make all of that more streamlined process as well. Briefly, the HR functions they can incorporate are performance management, both for annual evals, tracking employee goals, or if employees are on performance improvement plans. It will send automatic alerts and reminders for everything that needs to be done, not just for HR functions, but for time cards. Time card reminders will go to all the employees and the managers to approve it and all of that. They have automated processes for when we do process new hires or a transfer or a termination. They have benefit enrollment and administration, both for new hire mid-year enrollments and for open enrollments in November. They do offer employee development and training through the system. We currently have safety training. Some employees need to attend monthly or quarterly, and it can all be tracked and administered through Kronos. Payroll and tax features, it would be very nice to have the timekeeping and payroll with the same company because then it's all already in the system. There's no downloading information and then uploading it or manually entering it into the payroll system. So that will directly integrate into payroll. They can process our child support and garnishment payments, our ACA reporting, tax filings, and all leave tracking and accruals. And then lastly, the self-service is another huge piece that we'll see a lot of employee benefit in. So using their same logins they would use to punch in and punch out, they could also access all of their previous pay stubs, all of their W-2s and previous time cards, all their PTO accruals as of that date, so they know live what they have in their bank, and all benefit information available to them and how much it would cost if they're interested in enrolling, because there are a lot of benefits employees are eligible to enroll in besides just what the city offers. They're eligible to enroll in MBA and NESPERS and PARA and all of that, but it's very hard to disseminate all of that information as well. So that would be very helpful to have it easily accessible to them. And then also through the system, they can request address and name changes, tax, direct deposits. They can request all of those changes through the system rather than multiple applications and forms they would need to fill out. So I also included several data sheets in your packet. I think there's 5 or 6 of them if you wanted more in-depth information on all of the processes that it offers and how that looks and works online. I did include also the proposed contract that they sent over for us. It is a 3-year contract, but then renewal every 12 months after that. So then for the cost, on the financial impact section on the car, they do have a one-time setup fee of $6,750, and then the minimum annual fee of $21,705.60. But the total cost of the systems, those 3 systems we could discontinue, is $11,000. So we could discontinue those, and for the cost of about $10,000 annually, we get the electronic timekeeping system, the onboarding, performance management, scheduling, and employee self-service. And I like to put a star next to that number because that doesn't include the cost of just the time and the paper and the supplies we are currently using. So it truly is less than that $10,000 annually, but that is what you can see on the bill. So what questions do you have?
Number 1, do you work for Kronos?
No,
Because that was very well done.
Yes, I am a fan, but no, I don't.
I applaud anything that's working towards efficiency and cost effectiveness. Just in our small business, we did this a few years back, and we did not have, just like you said, the ability to quantify all the data and all the numbers. So the initial price tag was a jagged little pill for us to swallow. However, within 9 months, we realized the savings and the efficiency and the effectiveness that having all these tools brought together and modernized really brought a small company. So I can only imagine a larger organization dealing with more dollars and more complexities. I can see the benefit that this would really bring. And so, yeah, thank you for the great presentation. Like I said, it was well done. And I think the advantages, from what I can see and what I've experienced, far outweigh any monetary initial setup and dollar amounts.
Thank you.
Question?
Yep.
Does it cause overtime to go up? What I'm thinking is that people just finishing their shift, could be public works, could be law enforcement,
Sure.
they're not at a desk that they can just leave at 4:30.
Oh, sure.
And sometimes when the paper sheets, they would put, 9 to 5, let's say.
Sure.
And maybe they're just putting their briefcase away, or they're meeting with, chit-chatting in the workroom or something. And if they didn't get clocked out, is there a way to override that so they could say 5 o'clock?
Yes, there is. So it sometimes happens, the system's down, they forget to punch in or punch out, especially in the beginning, it'll be a new process.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. If they've forgotten or if it's an incorrect time, whatever the case was, you can actually request through the system. It'll send a message to your manager and it will say, hey, I forgot to punch in when I got here at 7:30. Can you make that correction? And then the manager would have to approve it. It depends on how many approvals we want to build into it. It could just be manager approval. You could require payroll or HR approval too. But yeah, I would at least require manager approval. An employee cannot edit their own time card, so it would have to go through some channel to get approved. Yeah, so there are ways to fix that.
Okay.
Other questions?
Oh,
Rick?
you're not planning on getting rid of anyone?
Employees? No, not employee-wise, for sure. No, it's definitely going to
More
save.
efficient then.
Exactly. Yep, it's definitely going to
Free up
save time.
maybe?
Oh, yeah.
To do something else.
Absolutely. And it's going to save a lot of time, and some of that's going to get eaten up right away by being kind of the Kronos help desk at first. People are going to need to be trained in on how to use it. New hires are going to be coming in and needing to know how to use it. So some of your time will get taken up by helping with Kronos, but not near the amount of time you're spending doing all of the processes manually.
And then employee would have to punch in at a certain location or use their phone? If they
Yep, so we're still working out the best way that would work, but they could use, like all the employees at City Hall have a desktop, so we can always just punch in on our desktop. The ones that are going to be trickier would be like Public Works, if we just have a dedicated computer or tablet out there that they could use for punching in or punching out, because not everyone has continual access to a computer in that department. Otherwise, Kronos does offer a time clock system that's just a time clock box that they could put at your location, and it's fingerprint in, fingerprint out. You just have to put your thumbprint on, it'd punch you in, and then you're good to go. So there's a lot of different options that we can look at for what would be work best at each location.
Okay, so how would you deal with an employee? I know one company that has this happen. They forget to punch in.
Yep.
And then the supervisor says, oh, you didn't punch in. What time did you come?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say, oh, 7 a.m., but they didn't get there till like 8:30.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
deal with that then?
Yep, so all time cards will still have to be approved by the manager at least. So there's at least that double check where if the manager has to be aware of their hours. But to be honest with you, it's still better than the system we have now. Because the system we have now, they put, I worked 8 hours that day. We don't know when they got there, we don't know when they left, we don't know what breaks they took, and the manager just has to sign off on the total hours. So there's always going to be some complications, but it's at least definitely better than what we are currently doing. But yeah, and that is why I know Life Science Innovations recently switched everything over to Kronos, and I know they were running into the problem of other employees punching in for each other. So that is why they implemented their time clock solution, because then you thumbprint in, thumbprint out. You can't clock in or out for another employee that way. So there are options. But.
Thank you.
Councilmember Christensen?
Thank you. Sounds very 21st century. But I remember being told that all these electronic files are going to create less paperwork. Somehow, I believe it's going to create more paperwork. How about security of the system? I mean, are they going to have a card or is it just a thumbprint?
Well, as far as punching in and out, it would be a username and login to get into the system. Or if we went that time clock route, it could be, thumbprint to punch in and punch out. Otherwise, their system is usually, it's a username password protected thing. If they get locked out, the administrator would have the access to reset a password so they could get back in. Does that answer your question, or was there more?
Somewhat, but can they get into the system and change anything? Can somebody go in, or does it take the administrator or you or to change whatever, somebody's time or?
Yep. So employees will not be able to edit their own time cards. You can build in basically whatever permissions you want. So like employees cannot ever edit their own time card, no matter who you are. It would have to be approved or edited by a manager or supervisor or HR, or if we wanted a dedicated finance employee. And you can have multiple people with the same permission. So at my previous company, it was HR. So if they had a time card correction, they would fill out a time card correction form, their manager would sign off on it, and then they'd hand it in to me so I could make the correction. But you can build it however you want. And managers would only be able to view the employees that they supervise. They wouldn't be able to see everyone, only the people they need to see. You can assign roles like that.
So the time card correction sheet is paper.
That's what we did previously, but it has the capability to be handled through the system, so that would be preferred.
I'm sure it's a whole lot more efficient. I'm all for efficiency. But the annual fee, you said, is going to be about $10,000, discounting what we're already paying.
Yes.
Somewhere around that.
Yep.
And is that includes upgrades? And I mean, like some of these systems we use, like Intuit, every couple of years you pay X amount of dollars just to get the new system. And
sure. It's my understanding that that's included in our annual fee. I can double check and I can guarantee that and come back with that information, but I can check with Kronos. But that should all be included to update their own software.
I would think it would be.
Yeah.
It's just my curiosity.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's an efficient system, and I'm sure we'll be using it.
Other questions? Yes.
I just have a question on, so fire department, I'm sure the chief has already looked into all this, but, so, on their pensions, so they've got both the PERI piece and then they have, because
The
they don't
deferred
pay
comp.
into
Yep.
the deferred comp piece. So that, can that all be managed through this system as well?
Oh, yeah. All the benefits can be automatically set up when they're enrolling them, and it'll be all deducted automatically, and they'll be able to see on their pay stub exactly how much went where, whether it was for a benefit, deferred comp, or wherever. Yeah, that will all be in here.
Okay. And then, something I talked to the city administrator about, was when we're reallocating Becky's time now because of the merge.
Yeah.
So according to what I was hearing you say is that this system would actually be able to track that, what percentage of the time was spent on school district time and what percent was spent on city time, correct?
Yeah, yep, it would still
By
be,
project code?
they can do project tracking, exactly. So usually what I've seen previously is they can punch in, it was at an assisted living facility that I worked before, and they would punch in whether they were in memory care or whether they were in general population. And that would track where they were working because there's shift differentials and things like that. So yes, it can absolutely track projects.
Certainly. Sounds good.
Other questions? No, it was very clear. It's my second time hearing it, that our system is very antiquated when you see what is available out there. So it was a very exciting opportunity. Are we under a time?
No,
for this
just our own deadline. We wanted to implement it in 2019, so we're to the point where we need to be signing contracts soon, so we wanted to make sure we were all on the same page before we signed contracts.
Council, if there's no push tonight, I guess if we were going to answer a couple other questions, we can put it on the agenda for the next council meeting.
Sure.
All right, thank you for the Kronos presentation. And yes, if they are looking for a new employee, you would be great, but you cannot leave here. All right, so we move on then. We've got the recreation coordinator job description and authorization to fill that position. Our recreation director, Rob Baumgard, please.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah.
Top one view show.
All right, Mayor, member of the councils, tonight I'm seeking to get approval to post 2 recreational jobs. We met as a recreation committee on September 6th to discuss the organizational chart of the department. We had lengthy discussion on that, and the committee agreed to hire or look to post 2 recreation coordinators and have the recreation director take more of an administrative role of the Civic Center. Currently, we don't have any programmers on staff. We have 1 clerical position. I'm acting as the Civic Center manager as now, and 1 community center and 2 full-time arena staff. So I'm asking for approval to post 2 recreation coordinator positions. And on Friday, I found out that the pay range was rescored and is now currently going to be a 5 instead of a 6.
I was going to say, the committee said, well, they wanted 1 at 7 and 1 at 6, and then we decided to go with 2 at 6. So why is it down to 5 now?
Unfortunately, I wasn't at the committee meeting, so I am sorry. That's my fault that it says 6 on the job description. So we scored it afterwards once the description was complete. It's the Hewlett scoring system that we use for job scoring, and it came in at a 5. So I knew it was 5 or 6 when I brought the job description the first time through, and then unfortunately I wasn't able to score it till after the committee met. So that is why it came in as a 5.
Okay. But at that range, you aren't going to get good employees. You're going to be back to where community ed is then. And we want to have a top-notch program here.
Sure. I know that the scale does leave room, if you find an employee with experience, it does leave room. They do not have to start at the minimum as a new employee. You can take into account previous years of experience and start them farther up the scale. But that is the minimum that it came in at with their pre-established city scores, or city pay ranges, I should say.
Doesn't it take union approval?
This one is not referenced in the union contract. So what our attorney advises, where the union contract is silent, we have a lot more leeway. That was Brandon I worked with, not Robert, but.
Councilmember Cervantes.
Thank you. Could you share with us what that pay range is for the 5?
Absolutely. Pay range 5, the minimum is $17.96 an hour up to $24.74 an hour. So salary-wise, that's $37,000 to $51,000.
Those last two again, yearly?
Annual, $37,300. Max is $51,400.
Mr. Mayor.
So I'm somewhat familiar with the scoring process. So what tasks would Rob have to include into the job description to
bump it up?
So how far down the 5 were you?
Sure. No, it is very close to a 6. So, I mean, if we wanted to add a little more responsibilities, like the factors they judge it on, knowledge and skill, problem-solving and decision-making, their scope, their impact, working conditions, internal, external contacts. And I know we discussed this too, if we ever added anything, if we increased any responsibilities in those areas, it would constitute rescoring, and it would increase the score, and in some cases, increase the range.
Councilmember Nelson.
Supportive of moving forward with this, and I think if that's where it's scored at, I think to be fair to the system, that's where it needs to be. If you're uncomfortable with that and you need to look back at redoing the who's doing what, then that's a different subject than saying let's just change the job responsibilities. So I think it's important that we have the right components in the programming, and I've had a conversation with Rob also, and I think he's comfortable with how this is laid out right now. And the concern I have is for Civic Center administration, and maybe that will play out with what he will have time for and what the programmers will be doing. But I'm supportive of moving forward that as it's recommended. If other people aren't comfortable with that, then I think you need to go back and review it for the right reasons.
Any other questions relevant to scoring? I can tell you that in the conversations originally, we had talked about a single programmer at a 6, and we talked about the position that Councilmember Nelson just referenced at the Civic Center and stuff, it as being comparable to the current one we hired at the community center at 7s, and having 2 7s and a 6. I mean, I know these things aren't cumulative and you add them up, but it can be. I mean, that adds up to levels of 20 cumulatively, and if we're going to add an additional programmer, if we were to maintain those at 6s, those would put us at about a 26. And if you made them 5s, if that's what they're scored at, I mean, that's an increase of approximately a 4, from a 20 to a 4. But if that is what the needs of the city are, and we can work with those, they seem to be appropriate levels when we were putting those numbers together. So it is more than what we initially had seen. It's an extra programmer. But if the needs are that we need extra programmer, I don't know if the difference of a $3,000 a year means that we're not going to get quality employees. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we're going to get the employees that we have to make this successful. That's been our underpinning of all of the conversations, is to make sure that we make sure that this works. And if this is what we're hearing from the director that makes it work, I'm comfortable with it, but open for more conversation for sure. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Meski. Does this leave, I suppose, like you said, maybe upper 5, borderline 6, but I mean, could it be viewed or interpreted as if somebody was an upper 5, I mean, is that incentive for growth and progression within the position itself? And how easily achieved is that?
If they say want to take on more responsibilities,
Sure.
that would bump it up. I mean, yeah, that's something we could definitely look at if it happened. I don't know at that point. I mean, I can't think of a union person who would be angry about bumping it up a pay scale and paying them more. So I think that would be.
I always see incentive as being kind of this motivating factor, and if we find this great applicant that, you know, starts in one, you know, if it's one category versus another category, you know, if they're that close and taking on more, you know, if they're ambitious enough to take on more responsibility, I say that's even better because it's indicative of the personality type that's willing to grow and learn and rise within the city ranks. And that's what we need for good long-term employees. Just my opinion.
Other questions regarding the scoring of the positions? All right, thank you for that part.
Does anyone have any questions about the programmers?
Yep. Pardon? Questions regarding the actual job description? Yeah, Councilmember Nelson?
It's not regarding the job description, it's regarding the, I know marketing for the Civic Center has been something, Rob, that you've been working on.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, do you see that still as your role to work with marketing, or will you see the programmers getting into marketing of some of the things too?
I would be taking the role of the marketing of the Civic Center.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Fagerly?
Isn't the community center director supposed to be doing marketing for the city too? So wouldn't
Yep,
that-
she'll be assisting on kind of the recreation program as a whole, to be marketing it as our programs, the community center, any type of events that we have going on.
Okay. And then if you hire 2 programmers, are they equal then? And then if you go on vacation, or who do you put in supervision then of the program while you're gone?
The programmers would be in charge.
Which one though? Or are they equal?
They'll be equal.
Okay.
They'd be in charge of their own programs with my oversight.
But if you're gone,
Wouldn't you have the community center director, because she's a 7, be the supervisor?
If that's the way, yeah, we can do it that way.
Councilmember Nelson?
No, I just wanted to clarify when I was talking about marketing, I was thinking of Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I know that Rob has worked with that group. And so I just wanted to make sure we were keeping a connection, and maybe that will include the community center too. So that was the reason I was asking about marketing.
Additional questions? Yes.
Do you want to move this forward?
That's what I was finding out. It looks like we're done with questions. If we're comfortable with the reassessment of pay range 5, are we comfortable moving this forward with the hiring of 2 recreation coordinators? All right, seeing no objection, I think we can move this to the agenda this evening. Thank you. That is it for labor today.
Thank you. Next, we have the Finance Committee report. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I think Steve's prepared to do the financial report. With that, I just want to say thank you to the people who showed up for our first budget meeting last Tuesday, and there'll be another one this week. I know that it was recorded, but I haven't heard, is it out there, the last session?
Went up this afternoon.
Went up this afternoon? Okay, and where can people find that if they want to view the session?
It's on the city's website, and it's also on the city's Facebook site.
Okay, but it's not on Rec 8? Is it on Rec 8?
I don't know that for sure. Councilman Nelson, I'd have to check with the IT department. They were given the list of items that we had discussed at the public presentation on areas to put it, so we can certainly check on that and let you know.
Okay. And I'll let Steve go ahead and go through that. The second item that's on there is for information that was requested, I think, both by the council and at the budget meeting. And so Steve will address that one too. So, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the August financial report was included in your packets. It starts on page 35 electronically of your packet. August is a month that is kind of in limbo. It's not the third quarter. It's during the budget process. We do meet with the departments, and we've had a couple departments where there's a couple areas that we're watching, and maybe line item wise they may be in at or budget, but overall the department, which is the council set level, they should still be okay by the end of the year. But third quarter is when we actually do an intense and in-depth review with the departments. We do meet with them monthly. They do get monthly reports, so they have a chance to review those as well. The first on page electronic, page 36, is the major projects that we're looking at. These were the ones that were approved in the budget. The City Hall one has been put on hold. We did incur a few costs on some preliminary design work. The Civic Center R22 project is starting in earnest now. I believe they've started some work with the natural gas, and we have not received any contractor payments yet, but that project is starting. Again, payment management, August is a month where they're working hot and heavy. September, they'll be starting to wind that up, so we'll be getting closer to getting some final pay estimates and those types. All those projects, when we do bonding for it, are somewhat restricted. We can only use the bond funds for those projects. And so if there are excess dollars there, they have to go back into the debt service fund for those projects to repay those. The cooperative projects you see below there on the airport and leisure services, Robbins Island, there was a question at our meeting last Tuesday on the deadline for the legacy grant. That is June 30th of 2020. So that project is being worked on, and now with the new project director, manager, and the new rec director, they are reviewing that with the public works director. The next page is a listing of some less major projects, but capital improvements. In checking the 3 lift stations and the waste treatment are again in depth in getting close to being done for some of them. We had a bond issue, PFA financing for that. The interest rate on that PFA loan was a little over 1.1%. That's one of the items that the mayor has directed in discussions when we're reviewing for 2019 and the weights for the waste treatment plant on if there are some bond issues that we can maybe prepay in the waste treatment area. Conversations with the superintendent at the waste treatment plant. Major areas there that you see are all in progress. Just payments not have been submitted to finance for payment. The one that will not be done is the muni pumps, the $100,000. He indicated that they will not be doing that because of some other changes that they did and eliminated the need to redo those. The tractor and the Ford pickup, I believe, are before you tonight at the council meeting, asking for approval to actually purchase those. Squad cars are in and have been updated. And the Public Works pickup, I believe the council has taken action to use those excess dollars to purchase a pickup, and that was done at the last council meeting for the project manager. The next page, which is again some capital improvements. The playground equipment, again checking with the Public Works and Rec. I believe the equipment's been ordered, but the bills have not been submitted for payment yet at this point. And so there's always a time delay between what you see on your report and when we get the invoices to be paid. But I believe that play equipment has been ordered and is being installed or will be installed shortly. The revenues, again, we should be at roughly 67%. And so we get to the point where in June and July, we get our LGA, our local government aid, and our property taxes, and then we start falling off again until we get to December, and we've talked about those cash flows in the past. So we're a little behind on the revenues, but that's due to those cash flow issues that we have talked about in the past. Again, 67% is the target. One of the things that you'll see here is that at the last meeting, I brought before you some budget amendments to update all the departmental budgets due to the labor contract settlements. Those amendments have been instituted here and are in these numbers. The reason that you'll see some of the departments a little higher than others are when we have 26 payrolls. We have 2 months where we have 3 payrolls, and we're kind of like a payroll ahead, so it's not evenly distributed. So that's why it's a main reason why a lot of these are just slightly above the 67%. The assessing, that was a billing that we received, and that was due to a contract. That is 100% of what we will owe on that, so there will be a little excess in that budget. The next page, public safety and transit. Again, it should be at 67%. Police department is one of those departments where we've had some conversations, the chief and I, as far as some line items, but overall, the department looks like it should be okay. One of the items there is the overtime line item, but we're aware of that and have had discussions on it. And so the transit system, again, is a one-time billing, and we have not received that yet for the transit system. The next page for RAC 8 and library and some of the non-departmental. The cultural and rec we mentioned at the last monthly meeting, that is the civic groups, and we've received all their requests that they've submitted. Aquatic Center is the final. There may be a few bills that trickle in September, but that will be pretty close to where it'll end up as well. So next month, again, when we're at the end of the quarter, we'll have some of these areas where we will have some final numbers for you. The waste treatment plant, again, we've talked about that and the timing with the municipal utilities where they collect the revenues and submit them to the city following the month. So this actually is only for 7 months of collections. And we are in the process and looking at the rate study and again and evaluating all the debt service for the waste treatment plant to see if there's some that can be retired early, or the capital projects with the city taking over Eagle Lake. And that has been discussed for the 2019 budget. And the final page, listing of the investments. We are working, as I mentioned last month, with the local institution to be able to do some more money market and more liquid funds. If you recall, the auditor at your last meeting talked about the percentages that are in the long-term end of the investment portfolio, and we're trying to fill that 1 to 3 year gap. And that's what we'll be using, that $10 million that you see there is more liquid and filling in that front end of the investment portfolio. With that, Mr. Mayor, Chairman Nelson, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you. The MUC rate study that's being done. I mean, I noticed that the revenues were more than expenditures last year. Mm-hmm. What are we studying the rate for? Is it because of the waste treatment plant and what we have to do out there?
There were two. The rates were set at 5 years through 2017. Mm-hmm. They were not reevaluated in 18 due to the discussions that were taking place for the Eagle Lake Sewer District. The Eagle Lake Sewer District capital needs are one of the items that are being reviewed, as well as the possible repayment of the debt.
So it isn't just the rate study for the city, then it's including the Eagle Lake.
The Eagle Lake rates are within the city's ordinance and have been since the city operated it and worked with the county. Yep.
But is that the reason for the rate study?
No, the rate study is to evaluate again the status of the waste treatment plant and the cash position as far as meeting the 1-year debt service, 6 months operating, which was the direction of the council, and then evaluating now that we've done a number of financings with the new plant, the salty discharge that's being discussed, the lift stations that are being updated, and the discussion with Eagle Lake, the capital needs going forward will be taken into consideration and discussed by the council.
Okay, so that's what's driving the rate study then?
That's correct.
Those capital needs that are going to be coming up?
Yep.
Because the cash position was very good last year, the waste treatment plant.
Yes, it is, and that's what the last rate study projected us to be at, so that we could evaluate that and see where, after the construction of the new plant, where it would all end up.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Go ahead, Councilmember.
Are there plans? I mean, I know what the budget is for the auditorium, the ceiling and the tuck pointing. Is that an expected expenditure that we plan to actually spend this budget? Do you know the answer to that, anybody?
I believe that those projects, the tuck pointing has been delayed just due to the timing and the dollar amount and the amount involved. I think the status of the building has put those projects on hold until the discussion by the council on buildings, not only the auditorium, but City Hall and all that. So I don't believe those projects. I'll defer to the Public Works Director, who would maybe have a little bit more information on it.
Mayor, members of the council, that's exactly right. We were under instruction that those projects for the auditorium, capital project for the auditorium would be on hold at this point.
I'll anticipate that those numbers will be even greater when we get around to that. The overage on Rice Park and the is Miller Park, are we done expending for that on this particular budget as well?
Those projects have not been finalized yet. Miller Park, there's a couple tennis grants on that. Rice Park, we're still compiling the final report. I believe all the construction is done, but the final reconciliation has not been.
Thank you.
They will be coming back to us for review, the Rice Park and the, when we deal with budget overages. Any other questions? All right, are you bringing up your? Tax comparative, is that where you're heading, Mr. Oakins? Yes.
Yes, Madam Chairman Nelson, at a council meeting when we presented the preliminary budget as well as the public meeting we had on Tuesday, a question came up as far as how does the city of Willmar compare to regional centers and their tax bases. So in 2016, and we had this as part of our budget presentation. This information is obtained from the League of Minnesota Cities website, which is www.lmc.org. They get and compile this information from the Minnesota Department of Revenue. The League's website also has a lot of other information as far as tax capacities, market values, and those types of things which drive these. And so it was asked if we could bring this back and give it to the council. We have looked on the website, and there's been some delay because the state of Minnesota is updating their information systems databases. And so this is 2016 data. It is not available yet for 17. They indicate it should be available sometime by the end of this month. But you'll see there that the city portion of the tax rate as it compares to the other 19 regional centers is the second to the bottom.
Any questions on this?
Sure.
Information?
I believe it's the lowest.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, you're correct. It is the lowest.
We're anticipating will be second to the lowest after the increase.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you. Does not one have to evaluate property values in each of these to get a true comparison? I mean, property values in Willmar seem to be higher than several other cities on there. Therefore, our tax rate is going to be lower.
There's a number of factors that go into considering tax rates and those types of things. Certainly the property value, similar type properties being valued, but also the mix of properties as far as commercial, industrial, residential, and those types, and basically new construction. We talked about that a little bit at the meeting last Tuesday. What type of mix of your tax capacity is commercial, industrial? Willmar's is about 45%. So you'd have to take all those into consideration in all of these communities. I mean,
To get a true evaluation of them, you'd have to, I mean, I don't know if they do that or not. Are you telling me that they do?
I'm not,
All those in?
no, I'm not saying that. I guess, we would have to do a study to see a similar property and the value comparison.
But that's what's missing from here.
That information isn't presently on this slide.
That's why I bring it up. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. I mean, I don't think it's a fair evaluation because we don't know the property values in those other cities, where I know ours, Willmar's, is high, and so the tax rate can be lower.
Well, again, as I mentioned, the tax mix is really a driving factor, and the state of Minnesota kind of drives that when they have a conversion factor, and I don't want to get too in-depth into it, but they take your market value, which I believe is maybe what you're
driving at,
comparing, and they convert it into a tax capacity value.
Okay.
And that the state can control which portion of your tax base is picking up the amount of your taxes by commercial, industrial, and those types of things. Residential, both homesteaded and non-homesteaded.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I think it's important to just identify the fact that this is the same form that's been used for the last 18 budgets. And so the numbers you're seeing in the calculations and the way it's been done is, I mean, the current mayor's not doing some voodoo math here. This is the evaluation that's been used, the evaluation tool that's been used for the last 18 years that I'm aware of. And in talking with you, I think it was last week or the week before, even before 2000 when I showed up as a fire chief, you were using it prior to that as well.
Yeah,
Not something new.
No, this is again taken from the League of Minnesota Cities website. It's not something that we compile or calculate, and they do get it directly from the Department of Revenue. They include also the school district's rates, the county's rates. Again, the city rate here is basically 26 cents on every tax dollar that you pay as a taxpayer in Willmar. 26 cents comes to Willmar. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think we're good.
Okay, next is public comment. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? At this time,
Oh, we're done. Never mind. Sorry.
At this time, I would just like to point out that our city administrator is not with us this evening. He is out dealing with a family issue, so just to make the public aware of that. Next is the state aid variance request for Highway 12 East Trail Project. Mr. Christensen.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. In front of you, if you'll recall, from a couple years ago, January 4th of 16, actually, we adopted resolutions to submit to Transportation Alternatives Program for a funding app for Highway 12 East Trail is what we're calling it. The short story is that trail will go from the new Lakeland Elementary School north on Lakeland Drive, on the east side of Lakeland Drive, and then east along Highway 12 over to 23rd Street southeast, which is by Casey's in front of the Chamber and Conference Center. This variance, after designing this project, I'll back up a little bit. After designing the project, it's required to have a 2-foot buffer zone or clear zone between any path and traveled surface. Along Lakeland Drive, we don't have that because of mailboxes. streetlights, things of that nature. So the variance is will request rather, a yellow stripe instead of the 2-foot clear zone in order to not move all of the mailboxes and things in that boulevard. That way that path can remain, the mailboxes can remain, everything can remain there. It's a much cheaper option since we don't have that of 2 full feet of clear zone. The options as listed there would obviously be obtain permanent easements from 22 property owners from Molina to the highway in order to get that clear zone and move the path back, or to obviously forfeit those federal funds and not do the project altogether, which is why my proposal would be to submit this variance.
Councilman Nelson.
Just a question. I remember when we were working on this and the importance of that trail there. I thought we had already done some purchases of the, when we talked about this. I thought we were partway there with the landowners to have done this.
Years ago, prior to me being here, we went through the process of purchasing, and I think we got to I don't think money ever changed hands. I think agreements were in place or verbals were in place with most of them to have a path that actually crossed Lakeland and went on both sides for a little ways. But those were not finalized.
So this portion of it wouldn't be, though, once it gets into the commercial area. It is just the residential area you're referencing, correct? Or is it?
For this variance, that is correct.
For that, okay.
Right. The entire path remains in public right-of-way, the entire length along Lakeland and the highway.
Okay. Are you concerned whether we can get this variance or not?
No.
No?
No, I think it'll go through. I think it'll be approved.
If they didn't approve it, do we have time to get it done?
Yes, the money is not even officially available until federal and fiscal year 19, so
Okay.
we've got plenty of
When it
time.
was. Thank you.
Actually, it's 20, I'm sorry, because we can't start until fall of 19.
Okay, thank you.
Additional discussion. Seeing and hearing none, there's a request to move this forward to the regular agenda. Is there opposition to that? Okay, plan on moving that forward as well.
Thank you.
Next is fire engine discussion. Chief Hansen.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Before you tonight, I'm bringing a request for us to hang on to or retain the 1988 Laverne fire engine. As you know, that we did purchase a new truck this year, and it was originally to replace this truck. But further research that I've been doing talks about ISO ratings, and last time we were evaluated, we did go up in ratings. So what I'm asking, and research says if we hang on to this vehicle and change it into a service type vehicle, that would help us with our ratings. So what I'm asking is for 6 months to do some further research and see if this is the way that we should go.
Councilman Nelson.
So just basically you're asking for us to keep it for 6 months while you figure out if this will accomplish the things that you're talking about?
That is correct. We originally, between the city administrator and myself, decided we were going to bring it back to the council this month to see if we were going to sell it or not. But I'm asking if we can just hang on to it for 6 months and let me get some more training in the ISO area and see if this will truly help us achieve a lower rating.
Councilman Maskey.
So you have no expectation that you're actually going to use this vehicle?
I think we have used it since we've gotten the new one. We've used it, there was a week period where 2 of our vehicles were down, so we actually used it as a frontline truck again. And we use it for training. And so we still do use it, yes.
So we're confident that we can use it in emergencies over the next 6 months?
That's correct. We've continued all the certifications and all the checks on it, so it's good to go.
Move forward.
Chief, this is something that I have a lot of knowledge on. Actually, the ISO rating that we dropped was because of lack of documentation, not lack of pumping capacity. And that's directly from ISO. It's not your lack of documentation, it was the chief prior to you. And that's disturbing. And, that's why, you hear us talk a lot about how we can do the best we can do. And documentation is such a huge piece. And this really goes to one of the first agenda items we had on our agenda, which is how do we track our people? And, all this stuff helps. And so, if we're looking at keeping this for 6 months, I can certainly understand that. But, I think our pumping capacity, I think we probably have doubled the pumping capacity that we need.
We are pumping capacity wise, but if we convert this to what they consider a service vehicle, it would give us an extra point, and then we're very close to that edge.
And so, I know that you and I have had conversations about this, and you're doing a lot better job in the documentation.
We're trying much harder.
Exactly, and so, your predecessor didn't believe in the ISO process, and as you know, he and I had numerous conversations in regards to that. So, what a lot of people don't understand is this ISO rating is a big deal to the individual taxpayer and also to the commercial taxpayer. Because you're paying more on your insurance premiums because of this drop in the rate. Anything we can do to add points, I'm all for. Certainly, I look forward to, you attending the training and finding out what we need to do. I think keeping it for 6 months and taking a look at it, I think, as Councilmember Christensen said, I think that's the right thing to do. So what are you asking for us to do tonight?
I think I don't know if it can just go on the consent agenda or if it's just maybe information. Because I know that the city administrator wanted to bring it back tonight just to see feelings of the council.
We haven't sold it. I mean, we're just extending it.
No.
So Councilmember Osmus followed by Maskey.
Where, do we have a room right now to store this?
Yes, it's in the fire station right now.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like out at the County Rescue Squad building or something. I
No.
would have thought if we got a new one, that would take the place of where the other
No,
truck was.
we have room. We have about this much room.
Okay.
Over there.
And what's the impact on insurance?
I don't think there is an impact. If there is, it's very little.
Councilor Maskey.
I was just going to ask, did we have an expectation that you were going, I mean, we talked about selling it, but we were not planning for those revenues from that sale for anything in the budget this year?
No.
Okay.
I guess I'm just wondering why we couldn't just have it on consent. I mean, you're not going to sell it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Even if you put it up for sale tomorrow morning, I mean, you wouldn't have it sold by following meeting. So I don't see the emergent need of moving it to tonight's meeting unless I'm missing something.
Nope, I don't either.
Do we even need to take a motion on it, or if we just accept?
Well, I
it for
think the
information?
direction was when he bought the vehicles to dispose of that one, so I think we would need to, we can do it under consent. I don't see that being a problem, so you already own the asset.
I don't see any problem with putting that in consent.
Okay. So if we're okay, we can put that on consent, and if someone wants to pull it next week, they can. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next, coin-operated amusement devices license. Ms. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, earlier this year, council had inquired about reviewing current licenses issued by the city and the necessity of city issuing coin-operated amusement device licenses. And annually, the city issues the coin-operated amusement device licenses for establishments as required by Willmar Municipal Code Article 2, Section 8. And the current fee for such license is $15 per license. In 2017, the city issued 40 coin-operated amusement device license is at $15 for a total of $600. And city staff finds issuing these licenses to be no longer necessary. It's our recommendation to discontinue issuing the coin-operated amusement device licenses effective October 31st, 2018, and direct City Attorney Robert Scott to draft an ordinance to reflect said change.
Council, questions, discussion? Okay, Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just ask, what is behind this and bringing this to us, or what is the motivation to, to cancel it?
My understanding is that staff was, when we abolished the soft drink requirement, that staff was instructed to look and see if there's anything else we could abolish. And I believe staff is recommending it based on that. Is that correct?
That is correct, because at that time of soft drink license, Councilmember Fagerly inquired about the amusement machine licenses.
Hey, Councilmember Nelson.
When we were reviewing this for the agenda, though, the question was, what else did we do with this other than just collect the fee? And I don't know that anybody has been able to answer that, like, do we actually go out and inspect them, or do we actually do something besides collecting the license fee?
And Councilmember Nelson, no, we do not.
That's it.
I used to. I gave it up last night.
Okay. City Attorney Scott, the procedural question, seeing we're 40 minutes ahead of time, could we go into closed session at this time and discuss the item on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, there's absolutely no reason you couldn't, because you're in a regular meeting right now. This is one of your regular meetings. You can always add an agenda item to a regular meeting.
Don't they have an issue, though, with shutting off? They can't, this stays on and music plays, so.
Yeah, it stays on no matter what. It stays on. Even when we go into closed session, it stays on. So.
Yeah, as long as the meeting is
Also,
recorded.
if we wanted to go into closed session now, we would not then have that as the last item on the regular scheduled agenda.
I don't know, why not? Will that work?
I just wanted to make sure that, I mean, Racket's still recording, they don't record our closed session. So I just
Correct. All
wanted
they
to
do
make
is
sure that-
have a blank screen. From what I understand, they record me.
Is there a way to take?
I would like to just make sure that we can handle the closed session appropriately.
Councilmember Scott, City Attorney Scott.
I mean, the requirement is that the meeting be recorded separately. If we can discontinue the main
Live
system, the live feed, we would need to do that, but we do have the recording device for the closed session ready to go.
Chief, can you go and see if he can go to blank screen?
We'd have to call a meeting to order and then go into closed session, right?
Well, it's important if we're going to do it that we actually talk about why we would be doing that, or?
Correct, yes.
I don't think it's on the agenda. I don't know if we've mentioned it for anybody watching the meeting. So if they're watching right now, they're wondering why.
Council is going into an executive session pursuant to state statute, talking about selling real estate properties is the reason. And after we find out if we can do that, then we go into closed session. But we're waiting on that. Ms. Thompson, are you ready with the recording device? Okay. We'll adjourn this meeting and we'll go into closed session.